Good morning. My name is NathanielLacktman. I'm an attorney, healthcare attorney with the law firm of Foley & Lardner. I've been practicing healthcare law about 13 years, about the last 5 of which have been in the telehealth and virtual care space. I head our firm's telehealth and virtual care practice. We have about a dozen attorneys across the country doing pretty much nothing but representing AMCs, hospitals, startup companies on telehealth virtual care issues in the US and abroad. I'd like to thank Kathy and Karen for having me here today. It's going to be a real pleasure. I'm going to talk about some of the legal considerations with a particular focus on the direct-to-consumer market. Tomorrow I'll be speaking on payment policy, how the state laws really affect the private marketplace and what you can do about it. So I'm sure there's a lot of interest in reimbursement and payment and whatnot. I'm not going to cover that today. That'll be the gist of what we talk about tomorrow. So I know I love the survey concepts, and these CIS boxes are totally rad. I'd like to survey the audience real quick. Who here is really busy with a lot of things and feel like they're pulled in a lot of different directions? Raise your hand. Okay. Who here knows their body well enough to feel like when they're sick, they know when they should go to a doctor? That few, okay. Who here has been sick but said, you know what, I'm just going to tough it out and go to work because I'm so darn busy? All right, shame on you people, right? You're going to get your coworkers sick. That's how the bird flu spreads. Really, okay. Direct-to-consumer telehealth has gotten, I think, a bad rap. Right? I could survey people and raise their hands, say if you like or dislike DTC telehealth, but we don't even need to go there. Just like fast food, I used to call actually direct-to-consumer telehealth drive-through telehealth. And in a semi-pejorative sense, even though I certainly represent a lot of clients who offer that. And over the last maybe 2 years, I've come to have a better appreciation for it. And people are smart enough to know when they want to choose a particular service provider for their healthcare needs, when it's appropriate, when it's not. I think walk-in clinics, urgent care are fantastic options, and I think most people would probably not disagree with that. Minute Clinic is itself shown to be a phenomenal business model and a patient access. So why, if as a general concept we're comfortable with that, are so many people not comfortable when it's just in the cloud or virtual care? I say that for those limited scope of services that some of the DTC companies offer, they're perfectly appropriate, particularly if the alternative is for the person to not go to a doctor at all, because it's going to take too much time out of their work schedule and their condition could go untreated. Also, we've heard from like 3 other speakers today, and many of their versions of direct-to-consumer was not the drive-through set of 12 protocol-driven urgent care alternatives. This was RPM. These were meaningful relationships on a long-term basis between a healthcare provider and a patient. We can have direct-to-consumer arrangements with a physician group, a PCP, having after-hours or virtual care-based services available to their own patients. That is a real benefit, and it should not be stomped out, right? All right, on the right-hand side, we have a little joke of an image on the hub and spoke model, right? It just looks a little bit more swirly. And on the left-hand side, we have legal issues. So there are a multitude here in the blues of business models that are available in the telemedicine context, right? Whether it's direct-to-consumer up top, institutional arrangements, or clinician-to-clinician, apps, CCM, and within each of those bubbles, there would be a multitude of ways that you can build out your contractual arrangements and the legal and regulatory issues that you need to be cognizant of. The left, the blue bubble, is very dynamic. The industry is continually changing and evolving. We see this from some of the clients that we've had the privilege to work with, like the really large household names like the Mayo Clinics and Mass Generals, but then also the startups that are really pushing the envelope in many ways. I'm sure a lot of you have read about Alternative, and now they're finally getting a lot of pushback from state legislatures and optical boards and ophthalmology boards, if only because they probably truly represent a very actual disruptive business model. People throw around that name disruptive quite liberally. This is a company that's using telehealth that would basically disenfranchise a lot of the business opportunities for existing in-person eye exams. So that is scary and threatening to some and a huge benefit to others, and that I think would be an example of a very disruptive telehealth arrangement. But on the left-hand side are the legal issues. Now these are relatively static. Right? The laws do change, of course, and new rules come out and ways to interpret them. But what is dynamic are which of these laws apply to your particular offering or your business model. And there's a lot of different factors that go into play. One is if you just want to remain as a decision point within a single state and offer virtual care services, and I'm using virtual care as a broader term, but say I just want to offer virtual care services within the state of Maryland to Maryland patients. That's fine, that's great. And then your issues are really going to be limited only, your legal issues only to Maryland law, right? And what Maryland has to say about it. Not that difficult, really, for you to accomplish, either with your in-house counsel for your system or whatnot. But if you want to go multi-state, if you want to go on a nationwide platform, if you want to offer these services international, if you want to turn it into a back end for medical tourism, right, destination medicine, you want people to fly in from other countries to your place and have treatments and surgeries and pay whatever you decide to charge them for it, then you need to be cognizant of a multitude of rules, and you need to build out your arrangements, your operations, in a way that's going to be scalable and consistent with rules across all these countries or all the 50 United States. And there are ways to do that. Let's take a couple as examples. Licensure, right? It's pretty fundamental. The doctor providing the service needs to be licensed in the state where the patient is located at the time of the consult. Okay, so unless there is an exception, and there are a multitude of exceptions to physician licensure, that's the basic rule. So we're in Maryland right now. If the patient was in Florida, you wanted to have a telemedicine offering, and that doctor located in Maryland would need to have a Florida medical license. However, right, there are a lot of exceptions. And one exception that really dovetails very well with business models are online second opinions. We're really building these out a lot, particularly for hospitals and academic medical centers, or a specialty group with a very deep dive expertise. And they want to have second opinions made available direct to consumer without the physician rendering the second opinion having a license in that patient's state. And the way to do that is to rely on the peer-to-peer consultation exception. Part of it is technical, part of it really is the consistent with the intent of the medical boards, where you would need to involve the patient's local PCP, their local treating physician, who would then consult and request for that opinion with the specialist physician who's not licensed in that particular state. This is available in most states, but not all. You know, depending upon the nature of the arrangement, there are states that are going to be blacked out. But what it does, if you really take a look and explore it, will allow you to leverage that subject matter expertise of your specialist physician across exponentially large number of states without requiring that physician to have licensure, so you don't have the same operational overhead and administrative requirements or whatnot. You are functioning under an explicit exception. We're not playing games here being too cheeky. You are operating under an exception to licensure, so you're not going to be exposed to an additional unlicensed practice of medicine risk. And then patients get to enjoy that expertise, and if they are happy with the ultimate recommendation or diagnosis with respect to treatment, they can then travel to your particular location and receive the treatments that they need and desire, right? I live in Tampa, Florida. Does anyone else have Florida on their tag? Oh my gosh, no. Okay. Well, I always get bummed out, you know, when I hear my friends say, I'm going to go to New York. I want to find out who's the best surgeon for whatever. It's, oh, go to New York, go to New York. Okay, well, there are expertise, expert physicians in other parts of the country, not just New York, right? But they have not yet done a great job of marketing and making those, that expertise available. So online second opinion is a great way. Another thing to think about predominantly in the direct-to-consumer arrangement is your fees. If you're going to charge a private fee, you know, a self-pay fee, and you want to do a subscription-based model, you need to be cognizant of state insurance law rules. Does anyone live in a state with laws that permit direct primary care? Do you know? Maybe? Okay. Well, let's say okay, thank you, great. Let's say you want to have an arrangement direct to patient where you're charging $99 a month for a patient to receive patient's family unlimited telehealth consults for a suite of services, right? Well, what is that? That is a $99 a month premium in exchange for the promise to pay, to provide the healthcare services that they need within that scope of a benefit package, right? That is insurance. In some states, that would not be allowed unless you, as a telehealth company, want to register as an insurance plan and get adequately capitalized and put a whole bunch of money in a trust account on the side, and I'm sure nobody wants to do that, right? You also need to be cognizant of FTC rules as well, because this is a direct-to-consumer offering. offering. You're doing it online. If you flash the word free and write red flashing lights over and over, you can get on the radar, and some of these telehealth companies have gotten on the FTC's radar with respect to overpromising the benefits or overpromising the scope of services. Because in that case, you are not really just having an institution-to-institution arrangement where you're getting paid however you want, monthly fee, modified encounter-based fee, shared savings, but it's really directly with an individual. And the government's expectations of their sophistication are very different than when you're dealing with an institutional contract. Here's a pro tip, right? Let's say you want to do that $99 a month offering. You don't want to spend the time to research all state and insurance laws or whatever. Why don't you put in your benefit package an express limiter? $99 a month up to 3 consults per month. Beyond that, it's $30 per consult, okay? That's clear in Express Governor. You're not taking on full risk like an insurance company would, and you should be in a much better position to scale up across the United States. The other thing I wanted to mention also is corporate practice in medicine, kickback and fee splitting issues. You might have come up with the greatest telemedicine platform in the world, but if you're a layperson, right, you cannot just have contracts with doctors across the country and then sell those services to end users, right? There are prohibitions on the corporate practice in medicine. There's prohibitions on physicians splitting their revenues from their professional services with laypersons. And then also, if your job in that entity, the LLC you created, is to help generate business and drive business, you could also be exposed to anti-kickback statute risk. And this applies even if it's a cash pay arrangement. Maybe about a third of the states or so have anti-kickback statutes that do apply even in the cash pay context. So what you normally do is a friendly physician arrangement where you'd have a physician owner of a medical group and you'd have a management services organization arrangement. But just be aware of that. And the last thing I wanted to touch on with regard to the legal issues are telemedicine practice standards and the modality of care. So telemedicine practice standards, in my opinion, are really arbitrary sets of rules that medical boards have promulgated, and they should be distinguished from standard of care. Standard of care is going to be applied by a medical board no matter what. And generally, the expectation is that the standard of care for a service provided via telemedicine is the same if that service were provided in person. And it makes sense, right? Because telemedicine is merely the conduit through which you're providing the care. But these practice standards are things like informed consent, specific disclosures to the patient, requirements that within 24 hours you need to make a copy of the medical record available to the patient's primary care practitioner if they have one. At least once a year you got to do an in-person exam. Those are the kind of things that medical boards have been putting out, and it's almost philosophical whether or not you'd like to have them exist or you'd rather they don't exist. Pennsylvania, I'm trying to think of the states here within this program. Pennsylvania, New Jersey do not have any, okay? The rest have promulgated practice standards. DC, they just had some proposed one. West Virginia, just I think last week or so, passed a law that included some practice standards. They can be a good thing because they can give guidance and help reduce risk and know affirmatively I'm operating within the scope of what's expected. But other states like Illinois, no practice standards, and they've been just fine without them. So with that, I'd like to thank the audience, and we'll sit down for questions.